All right. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Good. How's it going, Danny?
Pretty good. So good to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here. I appreciate you having me. It's been 6, 7 months, I guess.
Yeah.
December maybe last year.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten to know you quite a bit since then because we've been on weekly calls. They've been truly transformational for my business, and so thank you.
Yeah, awesome. I've enjoyed it. Enjoyed getting to know you and your team, and following along with the software products and company. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about today the process of looking at the numbers in your business and scaling it. You know, for house flippers, people out there flipping houses, wholesaling, all that kind of stuff. Sort of the process of helping, other business owners, other house flippers see, what's happening in their business and then taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
And
So everybody talks about KPIs and things like that. Do you want to just jump right in, or do you have something else?
yeah, let's do it. No, it's great.
Yeah. So, everybody talks about KPIs and things like that. And some metrics are more important than others. And, it's great. So we can say, hey, I did 300 deals this year. Well, that's great. But how much did you spend per deal and how much are you netting? So in a flipping business and a wholesale business, to me, what I'm after more than anything else is how much are you making per deal and how much is it costing you per deal to get that project done. So I'm not so interested in how many deals you're doing. I'm not so interested in how much you're spending to acquire leads. What I'm interested in is what's your net profit. Let's maximize that. Let's earn the most amount of money with the least amount of time, energy, effort, and spend possible. And let's maximize every channel that we can. And let's maximize every lead that we can so that you're generating something out of every lead as a transaction engineer, thinking what else, where else, how else, who else, we'll get into that in a minute. And then at the end of the day, how much are you spending per deal? So that's what really matters. And then there's some other things that you can track in there as you scale and you add, pieces to your team and your components. But those are the types of things that I really like to do with people is I like to dig into the business, see what they're doing, get a hold of the KPIs that they're tracking, if any at all, and then really start to drill down into that and find out what channels are the most effective. Not all marketing channels work equally in every area. So direct mail is better in some areas, internet's better in some areas, cold calling is better in some areas. So we take a look at those things, we drill down on it. And the great thing about numbers, the great thing about data is it doesn't lie. It's like comps, right? If you're going to do a deal, it's really funny. If you're going to do a deal, you look at the comps and the comps are the comps. It is what it is. The deal is going to sell for what it's going to sell for. But for whatever reason, people don't apply that same methodology to their business and the numbers of the business. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and with that being the case, how many times, well, I don't want to say how many times, but do you find it's often the case where somebody will tell you they're tracking something and they're really not?
Yeah. Yeah. People, and it's easy to fool yourself, right? In all kinds of ways. And let's just start very personal. I used to be very overweight and you don't think you eat that much until you start tracking it.
Hmm.
Man, I'm gaining all this weight. I really don't eat that much. But if you wrote down every single thing you ate all day long, every day, including what you're drinking, I was consuming, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 calories a day. But if you ask me if I ate a lot, I don't eat that much. I don't eat breakfast. I don't eat lunch. But, to me, breakfast was, 5 donuts and a big old sugared up cup of 7-Eleven coffee, right? So, that's calories. So
Yeah.
when you start tracking things, it really brings to light what you're really doing, just like a workout, right? You can go to the gym and you can bust your tail for an hour. You don't know how much weight you moved. You don't know how many reps you did. You don't know what's going on. You might think, man, I did a ton. But if you track it, it's like, oh, gosh, I only did about 4 sets. But, I was texting in between, ran into my friend, and I was at the gym an hour and I'm sweating, but you really didn't do anything. So, or you did a ton and you might have done too much. And, with marketing, there is a point of diminishing returns. And, a lot of people use the shotgun approach. They'll just say, I'm just going to spend, a ton of money on marketing and just throw direct mail out there or just do, pay-per-click. And if I'm generating leads, I just need to spend more and I'm going to generate more leads.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. So if you
Yeah.
start drilling down on that, looking at where they're coming from, what medium, what channel are they coming from, what's the most effective, then you can really get smart about the business and the numbers will tell you what you need to do.
Yeah. So there's a couple pieces to that, right? Because in the past, and I speak obviously from experience in doing this, making this mistake where I do the measurement, right? I'm like, I need to figure out what am I spending? What am I, what on this marketing and what is it generating as far as leads and deals for my business? And then I'll make decisions based on that, reporting of those numbers. And then I'll start doing it
Right.
and realize that I could go a year with putting out more and more direct mail or whatever the marketing channel is. And without actually keeping track of measurements to see what's really happening. I was going off those numbers that I initially looked at. So that's one thing that I've made a mistake in doing, because things do change.
Yeah.
And when you scale, sometimes the scaling doesn't keep pace, like the numbers change as you scale. And what
Right.
started out as like awesome, so I'm going to I'm going to multiply this, 10 times what I was doing and expect the same results. And that doesn't always happen. And then the other thing was, when you're
Yeah.
kind of losing the train of thought there, but yeah, it's just a different, being consistent with keeping, like looking at the numbers, but then keeping track of what's happening with the numbers as you are trying to scale that as well.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, to me, I really drill down on leads versus deals. So how many deals and how much generate?
Okay,
So
hold on.
the first thing I look at, what's that?
Yeah, just hold on a minute, because we got a little bit of, it's cutting in and out. Just a second there. Let me make sure it's not cutting on this key point here. Yeah, if you would just start back over about keeping track of the
Yeah.
deal part.
It's not how many leads you're getting. A lot of people focus on leads. I'm getting all these leads. Well, what I look at is how many deals are you getting and how much are those deals worth? So if you're a wholesaler, what are the fees you're generating off the deals, not the leads? So, you might have 1,000 leads coming in, but they're only generating one or two deals that are worth, $10,000. You might have another medium where 50 leads are coming in, but they're generating, 10 deals and they're worth $20,000. So that's where people can get lost in the numbers. And that's what I really like to drill down on, because that's what you want to pour gasoline on. Then you want to understand, once you know where the most profitable deals are coming from and how many leads it takes to get those deals, then you can really start drilling down and maximizing the efficiency of of your marketing channels. And, so you want to focus on that first and go backwards. Everything in business is reverse engineered. Everything I do in business, I look at the end result and then I reverse engineer it back. That's a marketing plan, after repair value, same thing. When you're flipping a house, yeah. So, reverse engineering everything. So just like the after repair value of a house on a wholesale or a flip, same thing with your marketing. You want to reverse engineer it. How much are my deals worth? What channel are they coming from? Direct mail, pay per click, cold calling, door knocking, driving for dollars, whatever it is, and then reverse engineer from there. So then you can drill back into how many leads does it take to get there. And then you'll know what your most cost-effective method is, because you're going to reach diminishing returns in whatever you're doing, and you want to track it geographically. So not only what medium is it coming from, but what part of the city, town, county geographically is it coming from? Because you don't want to just shotgun a zip code or an area, and then find out that all your deals are coming from one little hub, and then all the mail you've been sending out on the residual peripheral, isn't generating anything. So you can really start drilling down on those things.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen that with PPC, especially managing the accounts that we manage
Yeah.
across the board, seeing that we're within even certain markets, there's pockets where, people are paying for the clicks and getting those leads, but they never turn into deals. But there's other pockets where almost every one of those leads turns into deals. And it's like, if you've only got so much of a budget for those clicks, you want to put that towards the geographic area producing the deals and not the one that's not. And that's what
You
you're
want to be
saying, right?
scientific about it, because exactly, because it's getting expensive, to do these things. So you want to make sure that you know where your most profitable deals are coming from, and then you'll know what you need to spend and what's appropriate, and you can really start tracking, the maximum limits on that. And then, at the end of the day, the follow-up, so that's really the key. So especially with your higher volume, lower conversion mediums, meaning direct mail. Right now, you're about, average, I think industry average is about a 0.8, 0.7 in some markets response rate on direct mail. So you're going to have to get a lot of those leads coming in to get good deals, right? So, But just because those leads weren't good deals right now necessarily, they could be down the road. So you want to save all those, and you want to maximize every lead that comes in. So I always teach everybody a couple of things I train on, and this is like a good nugget here that a lot of people don't think about. Whenever you get a seller on the phone, you want to be a transaction engineer. So you're either buying at a discount so that you can wholesale or flip. If there's no equity and you can't buy at a discount,
Hold on, we got it cut out there again. So you said if you can't get equity or something like that and you're not buying at a discount?
Yeah, if there's not enough equity in the deal for you to buy and flip or wholesale, then you want to have a realtor referral source ready so that you can refer that deal to a realtor and get a marketing fee or a finder's fee from the realtor. So you're either going to buy at a discount that can wholesale and flip, refer it to a realtor, and you want to have buyers that do rent to own, lease options, subject tos, and you want to have that buyer pool so that it may be a potential for them. So if the owner doesn't want to list, they don't have enough equity for you to buy or wholesale, then the question is, well, would you be interested in an owner finance or a rent to own situation? Owners understand rent to own. They don't understand lease option, all the time, but they understand rent to own. So you want to have that buyer pool ready so that you can, offer that as well. And then.
All right. So, anybody watching this video on YouTube is going to see that Greg has teleported himself instantly into a hotel. I don't know how he did it, but we're going to try to ask him, find out what his there, because that's going to save us all tons of time. But what had happened before we had some of our technical difficulties there, where you were talking about, making sure that you're a transaction engineer, that you maximizing what you can do with the leads that come in,
right?
Profit from them one way or the other. And where we had cut off, I think, was where you were talking about, when people have multiple, properties to possibly sell. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so anything. So if you're with a seller, you're either buying at a deep discount so that you can wholesale or flip. And if there's not enough equity for that, then you want to have a relationship with realtors so that you can refer that for a listing and get a marketing fee from a realtor or a finder's fee. You can't get a commission if you're not licensed. And then you want to have your buyers that do lease options, rent to owns, subject to. So the conversation with the seller is, hey, would you be willing to rent to own? They understand that. Sellers understand rent to own. And then that way you can maximize that. And then at the end, we talked about what else, where else. So at the end of every conversation with the seller, whether you're buying the property or not, whether there's a deal or not, you always want to ask the last question. Do you know anybody else? Do you have any other property you'd like to sell? Commercial, residential land, we buy everything. Or do you know anybody else that has a property they'd like to sell? And they might say, hey, yeah, my boss has a building, has a house. Oh yeah, I was getting my car fixed the other day, and they said they wanted to sell the auto mechanic shop. You just never know. When you ask that question, it toggles things in people's heads. They don't automatically think to just bring up. They say, oh yeah, I own a piece of land over here, or I have another house that I'm renting over there. So do you have any other property that you'd like to sell? Commercial, residential land, we buy everything. Or do you know anybody else who's selling? So that right there is huge. That, everybody I coach, none of them are asking that question. Or at least they weren't.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. And that's, and how long does that take to do? I mean, really?
Yeah, it's just the last thing you ask. You keep it on your list to make sure that you don't forget, and you'd be surprised how many deals you get out of that. So the two things today, really, the two big things are, look at your data, understand, reverse engineer where your most profitable transactions are coming from, marketing channels and geographic locations, and what else, where else. Do you have any other property you'd like to sell, or do you know anybody else who wants to sell or has mentioned to you that they have a property they'd like to sell? And those two things right there you'll add 50% to your business right off the top just for those two things right there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Now, you had talked about people reverse engineering, looking at their numbers. Is there a certain threshold that you feel like people need to be at, a certain number of deals or something, to be able to have an accurate representation of what they're actually producing from the different channels? You know what I mean? Like if you've got one deal that was a home run, you wholesaled it for $40K from something, and then you've got 10 deals from something else where it's averaged out to like, 8,000. And so you go all in on this thing, but you didn't have necessarily enough data that 40,000 was a fluke or an outlier. Do you have any recommendations for that sort of situation?
You want to identify the patterns, and the numbers are going to show you the patterns. So yeah, you're going to have those outliers where you're going to hit a home run here or there, but there could be something to that. So that one that generated 40, where did it come from? Who was the seller? What type of house was it? What neighborhood? So you might uncover a pattern there by looking at a deeper level of everything involved in that transaction. What was the seller? Were they a widow? Were they divorced? Were they, retiring? Are they downsizing? Was it vacant? Was it a $200,000 house? Was it a $400,000 house? So, you really want to drill down into that, and then hopefully it'll happen again at some point. So then you can really start to, dial in those metrics and try to figure it out. So, same thing with the other side, the lower volume, lower ticket, deals, but they're higher volume. Same thing. What type of house? What type of seller? What type of area? All of that stuff. So when you're looking at data, it goes to a very, very deep level for you to really fully understand more than just, what kind of marketing you're sending, and tracking every single piece of marketing with a different tracking number, different tracking medium, even your website stuff. Everything should be separately tracked differently so that you can, all the way down to that seller and everything, so that you're marking all of the characteristics of that transaction.
Gold, pure gold.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like, I don't know that that's ever crossed my mind as far as, we got these certain deals from, organic website or something. It's like home run deals. Okay, well that's the marketing channel and campaign or whatever that brought that deal in. And there's another level to this, like you just mentioned, though, another dimension of it, where it's the motivation. It's not just the marketing, it's the motivation. Because if you can target in other ways through other channels that specific motivation, I think that maybe there's something a little bit more there. Yeah. That's something that could be very helpful.
Yeah.
Because the home runs. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the biggest chunks have come from estate properties, vacant properties that are inherited, that are in poor shape. Those have always been my best. And, another gold nugget across the board, almost everybody everywhere in the country will tell you that estate properties, probate properties, especially vacant, are usually the most profitable deals, but they're also the hardest to get and the hardest to get to.
Yeah. No sweat equity usually, right?
Yeah.
Easier for people to sell for less and just be done with it because it was a windfall or something that they just want to get money for. Yeah. Yeah.
It's found money. Nobody wants to deal with it. The family's fighting. They just want to get rid of it. And you come along, hey, I'm closing a week. No issues, no whatever. And, those for me, pretty much anywhere I've ever been have always been the best deals. And then even deeper beyond into the metrics. So let's say you're a virtual wholesaler. So I take people that are wholesaling and they want to go virtual, and again, virtual, a lot of people think virtual is some, system where you can be in a beach chair somewhere and you never talk to anybody or touch anything. And it's like virtual reality. Virtual just means you're investing in another market where you're not physically located. That's all that means. So you're just investing outside your area, outside your territory, or you're wholesaling outside your area and your territory. And the things you want to look at there, if you're really scaling your operation. So a couple of other metrics I help people take a look at, KPIs, is if you have a team, and whether they're virtual or in-house, and you've got a team of assistants, you got acquisition managers and disposition managers and things like that. What I like to track is what is the amount of time that transacts between, or transpires between the time you talk to a seller and the time an offer is sent, and the time you get it back, and the time you get it under contract. So you can really start drilling down on performance, right? So once you have a team, you want to start having performance standards and metrics that you can measure. So I look at that. So by the time that lead comes in, how long does it take for that acquisitions manager to fire off an offer? How long does it take to get it back? How long does it take to get it under contract? And you can really start identifying some patterns there in the performance of your team in terms of how well they're doing, and measuring it against other people and other investors out there and things like that. So, I'm telling you, data is huge. Data is huge. And what it does for you is it builds a predictable business that you can count on, that if you put X amount of dollars in, you're going to get X amount of dollars out time and time again. So it just becomes a game almost, so that to me is a true, virtual outsourced, almost a passive investment type of business. When you look at what you spend in dollars to generate the revenue on the back end with the data and the metrics and the measurements, that becomes a passive investment at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like you said before, the numbers don't lie. So when things start to change, numbers start to change, and you get early indicators that there's a problem within your organization
Yeah.
or what's going on with your market. You can find out where, like, ding, 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 hey, this needs attention over here. Let's dig into it, find out what's going on, instead of waiting till everything comes tumbling down, find out that you had an acquisitions person that was canceling all the appointments,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something
You
like
can pivot quick and shift quick. And that works in any business. We're just talking about investing. And I work with, different types of companies. In your case, it was a software company. And, I've got some builders, I've got some retail businesses, I've got some restaurants. This works in any business. You reverse engineer where your dollars, your customers, your net profits are coming from, and you go backwards. And if you measure every single thing in your business, it really gives you an inside look so that you can react and pivot and stay ahead of the game. And more importantly, cut off what's not working quickly. That's what kills business. That's what kills investors. That's why people give up. They don't track what's going on. They think, man, I'm getting all these leads, but I'm not getting any deals. This business doesn't work. Well, what kind of leads are you getting? Where are they coming from? Who's this? Once you start drilling down on it, you can fix things really quickly. And I've got, a client I'm working with right now that, had some difficulty. We started really tracking what he was doing, what he was looking at. And he wasn't looking at where are my dollars coming from. He was just looking at where my leads coming from. He says, man, I'm doing this thing. I'm getting all these leads. I'm like, hey, that's great. You're talking to 4,000 sellers. How many deals? Well, you only got a couple. Well, how much were they worth? Well, it was only worth this. So you can really rein things in and refine and hone in on what you're doing. And, it's different in different markets. And that's what's really cool about it.
Yeah, and that you just brought up a point too. It's like talk to 4,000 sellers to end up with a couple of deals, and seeing, it's also, yeah, the manpower and the brain power and all of that to put those deals together. Sometimes for different marketing channels can be vastly different, where you're killing yourself to put together a couple of deals with one of them, and the other one, like PPC typically, where the people are looking for you. They know they have a problem. They've got a property. They want to sell it. They're okay with selling at a discount. They're ready to go.
Right.
And so it's just like weighing out, okay, well, maybe it'll cost a little bit more, but at the end of the day, our business will be able to do more because it's not killing us to get each one of those.
Right. And it's easier on your staff. It's easier on everybody. And what I help people do is, I would rather you do 100 deals and make $1 million than 500 deals to make $1 million. But in the industry, everybody's focused on number of deals, number of transactions. That's what the measurement is. And, I can spend $1 million to generate 500 deals and not make any money. So that's the other side of the coin that a lot of people aren't looking at, with people out there that, are just focused on transactions. And, it's funny. So wholesaling is a lot like the real estate brokerage industry. The real estate brokerage industry is all about transactions, right? And the old school teaching of real estate was, you just focus on your transaction count and the dollars will follow, from a commission standpoint. And, that's true to a sense. In the real estate transaction world, every transaction generates a commission. But would you rather do 100, deals with $2,000 commissions, or, a handful of deals with $20,000 commissions? So when you really start to focus and rein in and hone in, forget about the transaction count, focus on the end result. How much a commission are you generating off these houses? And let's go after those.
Yeah. Yeah. So knowing the numbers, right. And having that
That's
from
the
the
key.
get-go. And, I think that's important for new investors to understand too, because it, might be the thinking of, well, I'm not even, generating enough to start measuring that stuff. And that's the point where you start needing to start from the beginning and measuring it, so that you can continue on. And even in the beginning, it's so much more important that you capitalize on every single lead that comes in, and you know what you're doing, because, things can turn south for you pretty quick because you don't have that war chest of revenue coming in.
Yeah. And the fewer deals you're doing, the deeper you can dive on the data and the transaction and the where they're coming from and all that. You have more time. So I say start from the beginning. I teach everybody, set the system up from the beginning, get in the habit of tracking from the beginning, have that system in place so you can track everything, so that as you grow and you scale, it's just part of your DNA and it's what you do, and you can make intelligent decisions with your money moving forward, and really maximize what you're doing. Because really, at the end of the day, what I teach people to do is how to build businesses that run on autopilot, not without you. You can't go away for months and ignore your business. You got to pay attention. But I teach them how to set up a business that will operate without them being daily involved in it, as long as they're still managing the data, watching the numbers, because that's really what it boils down to. And you're still the leader at the end of the day. So you still have to give your team what they need, you know, and you got to be that leader for them and be there for them and encourage and support and motivate and manage and delegate. But, you know, at the end of the day, you want to create a business that runs on autopilot, that generates cash flow, that you can invest in other assets, so that at some point you truly can step back and you've got all this passive income coming in that, you know, you're writing mortgage checks and, you know, utility bills, and that's about it.
Yeah. And you brought up another side of this, and this is why, you know, I ended up reaching out to you for coaching and this was basically the topic of the last episode that we did together. Basically, you know, you kept repeating, I'm a leader, delegator, and motivator.
Right.
I'm a leader, delegator, motivator. So it's not just looking at these numbers, tweaking numbers, stuff like that. It's thinking in terms of, even if it's just you and one other person in your business, you know, always seeing yourself as that, right? Because, you know, the plan is not to always be working in the business. You're going to get burned out. You know, it's to have that in mind, that's really where the goal should be, is to be that leader, delegator, motivator, and to always remember that is a part of your role. And, you know, this idea that, because I've made this mistake in the past, probably multiple times, where it's, you know, I get to the point and I'm going to lay back and abdicate and have somebody in a position and just expect that they're going to take it and run with it and do the delegating, motivating, and, you know, leading and everything. And, you know, it just didn't work out very well because I was the one at the top. I was supposed to be the one doing that. And so that's a huge lesson for a lot of people.
It is. And, you know, my mantra is, you know, not work on the business instead of in the business. I'm work on the people in your business so they work on the business for you. So it's all about developing yourself. So this is what I do more than anything else, is I develop leaders. I teach people how to become leaders so that they in turn can develop and teach their people how to become leaders so that they work on the business for you. And that's truly when you've arrived. That's when you have a business that runs on autopilot, a business that you can walk away from, that can and should run better without you than it does with you. The true mark of a great leader is how well the organization runs without them. And also, what do your people say about you? So whenever I interview people in my companies over the years and in my history, and even now with clients, I say, look, talk to my people, talk to my, trade partners, my vendors, my subs, my direct employees. You want to know who I am? You want to know what kind of leader I am? When we're done with this interview, I'm going to leave the office. You go talk to all of my people, and then you'll know exactly who you're dealing with. And, it takes a lot of confidence to do that, right? And it takes the right kind of leader to be able to do that. So that's what I've always focused on, developing other people, turning them into leaders so that they have ownership and accountability for what they're doing in their different areas. And they work the business for you, build the business for you, and you just create that culture of ownership within the company. But at the end of the day, you still have to be that leader. You still have to be the one providing the vision, providing the tools, training, systems, and support, and the clear direction and the accountability. So you'll never get away from that. You've always got to do that as long as you have an organization involving people, unless and until you turn that over to somebody else completely and you're out of the picture. And, that can be done too, but you got to bring up the right individual or bring in the right individual to do that. So those are the types of things that I do and I help people do. I've worked with you on, and, you've seen the results of that personally, and, how quickly that can change your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the beautiful thing about all of this is you work with a lot of top investors across the country. A lot of guys that have had a lot of experience, have gone through a lot, been through market crash and all kinds of stuff, come back, learned a lot of things, but then still aren't really doing these things that make a great business, right?
Yeah.
And, I love that, because what that tells me is if you're one of the few that does it in your market, what's that going to do for you? I mean, right? Like, if almost nobody else is looking at it in this way and actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
So many people will pay lip service to it. Yeah, I'm tracking that, but maybe they tracked it 2 years ago and are still going off of those numbers.
Yeah. It's really easy. You get comfortable, you got volume, you got transactions. And again, everybody in the industry, flipping and wholesaling, it's all about how many transactions, how many deals you're doing, how many deals you're doing. And, and even in business, what's your sales volume? Sales cures all, right? Sales doesn't always cure all. Profitable sales cures all. So as your organization grows in sales and transactions, your profitability should be growing exponentially with it. and your expenses, if you think the accordion theory, your expenses should be shrinking exponentially quicker than your sales are growing, and vice versa. If you have to contract and adapt, then if your sales are shrinking, then, you know, if you imagine an accordion, the bottom half of the accordion, your expenses should be shrinking that much faster. So when you're looking at those numbers in the data, like you said earlier, you can adapt so much quicker to market cycles. And our market's changing. You know, we're at a peak pretty much all across the country. And if and when a slowdown hits, it's going to hit fast, just like it did before. And if you're spending, you know, $50,000, $100,000, which some of my clients are, in marketing, that can hit you pretty quick, because you might have a bad month or two where you're gonna be like, you know, we got to stay consistent. We got to stay consistent, which you do. You can be at where you've spent 300 grand pretty quick with no deals coming in, and all of a sudden the market has shifted, and then you're caught. You have this huge overhead. You've already spent 300. Then what do you do? You know, so you got to be, if you watch that data, it's predictive analytics, right? So you can predict what's going to happen and when much better when you're watching that data on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, not just once a week, once a month, every couple of months, and knowing to a T, just like you tell people, hey, you got to know your market. How many properties are on the market? How long have they been on the market? How many under contract? How many days? How many have sold? How long were they on the market? What do they sell? List price to ask price, all the way down to the neighborhood, street, and block, right? So the same thing with your data, like we talked about, seller type of house, you know, situation, all these different things. You really got to track every single thing at every single level, because as the market changes, it's going to affect different sellers differently. So you want to know and be able to predict the trends. It's more important, and I'll say this is another huge thing. Everybody thinks, you know, buy at the bottom. You got to know the bottom. You know, it's more important to know the top and be able to get out at the top than it is to buy at the bottom. I can buy, you know, I can buy at the lowest level in the market, but if I don't get out at the right point, I ain't going to make any money. So I can buy at the deepest discount, but if I wait too long to sell, or if I'm not timing that market at the top right, then, you know, I'm in trouble. So you can always get out when it's time to sell. You gotta know the top, and it's more important to know the top than it is to know the bottom. And, you know, knowing what to do is valuable, but knowing what not to do is even more valuable. So, you know, those are a couple of things to always keep in mind. The data will show you what not to do. Nice.
So when somebody starts working with you, you know, how hard has it been for some of them to be able to look at that data, to actually pull that data and really get those numbers? Have you found any situation where, you know, they just tell you, I'm sorry, just the way we're doing things, there's no way for me to do that?
No, I mean, some people have, you know, so a lot of the people I'm working with have the right systems. They've got software that's helping to manage that. And at the end of the day, you know, if you're doing a spreadsheet, you're going to wear yourself out, but you can do it with a spreadsheet. But almost everybody I'm working with, I'm just trying to think if I have anybody that's not, are tracking things. They're just not thinking of it the way we're talking about. They're not tracking it to the level and to the degree that we're talking about. They're, like I said, they know, hey, I've got, you know, 500 leads coming in, but they didn't think about, well, wait a minute, how many of those turned into deals? And by the way, how much were those deals worth? So that's the trends that I'm finding, is that they might be tracking it, but they're not looking at it that way. And they're not looking at it to the detail of, you know, what type of seller, what's their age, what's the house look like, what's, you know, all that kind of stuff. What's the condition, you know, those types of things. So, yeah, I haven't found anybody that's doing any kind of level of volume that's not tracking something to some degree. So we just help them look at all the other areas they need to add to it. Not stuff that they don't need to be tracking, but the right things.
So have you had any pushback on anything from investors that you thought was interesting, where people were saying, hey, yeah, I don't think I need to do that? Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
No, they're like instant. They're on it instant. They're like, man, I need to start doing that right now. Let me, you know, so they're like, as we're talking, they're setting it up, you know, writing it down. So no, everybody, the light bulb goes off. They're like, wow, this is huge, because they get it. You know, the world that we're in today, it's about information. It's about data. It's about, you know, big data, predictive analytics. It's about, you know, artificial intelligence. And, you know, you're almost creating with that, you know, your own version of an AI system. And that's just where it's at in this day and age. So I haven't had anybody that's given any pushback on that at all, you know, and that's what's cool about what I do, is everybody's situation is different. Everybody's market's different. I've got people doing, you know, 300, 400, 500 deals a year. I've got people doing, you know, 50 to 100 deals a year. And I've got one or two that are kind of just starting out on the, you know, retail flip side, or on the wholesaling and flipping side. but they've had success in other businesses and they're experienced and they know real estate. So maybe they're like buy and hold people and they're switching, that kind of thing. So I'm not working with total beginners, because my program is pretty high level. So it's not really conducive to that. People got to have some sort of deal flow underneath of them before they could really maximize where I'm going to take them. But and everybody's different. I've got some people that are totally outsourced on their labor. I've got some that are in-house and they prefer that. So it's kind of all over the board. I don't tell anybody what to do and say let me rephrase that. I'm not telling anybody you have to do this. I'm just saying, hey, you want to be great. And that's really where this conversation can go is, do you want to be the best you can be? Do you want to be a great organization? Do you want to really be, like you said, the best in the business in your area and really be able to take advantage of the market cycle we're in right now and make the most amount of money with the least amount of time, energy, and effort possible? Nobody's ever said no to that.
Right.
Because I haven't found anybody yet.
Right. So what's the next stage though? I mean, you're looking at those numbers, you're dialing things in to make sure that, where you're putting your energy and your money into the business, producing the results that you want. Where do you take them next in that?
So next is team building. So we find what's working and where, and then you pour gasoline on that fire and you scale it. And then you take it as big as you can take it because you're only going to be able to take it so big. There is competition. There are other people and certain channels only work so well. And there's just only so many sellers in a market, right? But, as you go along, there's so many sellers every year in each market. So we just maximize it. We put the pieces in place and we try to be as efficient as we can at every level of the operation. So I'm not a tinkerer. I don't like to mess with stuff for the sake of messing, but I like to make things as efficient as we possibly can. I'm not somebody who reinvents the wheel. None of this that I'm talking about is new. This is all tried and true stuff in every industry across the board. Like I said, everything we're talking about is applicable in any business with any business model. So what we're doing is we're just opening up the awareness of people that may not have been business people like you. You worked, you had a regular W-2 job. You've never been in a position where you've had your own company and you've had to learn and look at these things. So we're just making people aware of what they didn't know. All you know is what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And we're just bringing that awareness to light. So once you've got the systems in place, then you just scale it. And then you go as far as you're comfortable going. So I'm not one of those guys that says, hey, you've got to 10X everything, or you got to 2X everything, or, I say, what are you comfortable doing? Let's get you there. Because it's like railroad tracks, right? So you stand on a set of railroad tracks and you look down, you can only see so far, but once you get to that point, then you can see even further. So for some people, they get the whole 10X idea, and then other people get the whole, they just want to do the next thing. And then once they get that done, then they see, wow, that wasn't that bad. Now I'm going here. So it just depends on the individual and what their personal goals are, what their comfort level is. And some people want to do as much as they can, and some just want to do something. So whatever that something is right now for them, we put that number down, we reverse engineer it, we dial in all the data so that we know how to get there and what it's going to take to get there. And that's what's cool about it. There's no guesswork. There's no if. It's if you're doing something now, you could do a lot more of it if you know what to do that's working. So it's really that simple. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
And where the challenge comes in is finding the right people. Do you in-house? Do you outsource? Are you virtual? Do you have employees? So those are the decisions. Some people like it in-house. Some people like it outsourced. There is no right answer. Everybody to each their own. It just depends on what everybody wants to do. And it depends on what the task and the role is. There are some things that, that you can outsource everything nowadays. So there's really almost nothing that you have to have in-house unless you're flipping at a large scale. Well, even that you can your project manager, you got to have somebody kind of coordinate. Even if you're turnkey with contractors, you got to have somebody coordinating those. That can be outsourced as well. So, almost anything can be outsourced now in a flipping wholesale business. But it's just whatever the individual wants to do.
Yeah. Well, and I like how you said that, because it's not just, every house flipper, every wholesaler wants to do this. And that's not really the case, because everybody's different. And, it's really, I think, more of us should take time to figure out what do we really want and what do we want things to really look like, not just in the business, but for us in general, and then building that business to create that lifestyle that you really want, so that's the goal, and you don't get lost in trying to compare yourself to other people flipping more than you and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I made a video about that the other day. The hardest thing to do in life is figuring out what it is you really want. Once you've got that down, the rest is easy. You just work it backwards. And everybody's different. And what creates stress, what creates strain on relationships and, personal finances and all those other things are people doing things that they're not cut out to be doing. So you have to understand yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your tolerances. You got to know how you're built and how you're wired and what it is you want to do. And, not everything is right for everybody. Not everybody needs to get out of the W-2 industry and be self-employed. That isn't for everybody. But, everybody can work a full-time job and do some real estate on the side or a business on the side and do that kind of thing. And, so I'm not one that says, hey, you've got to quit your job to be wealthy and do this. You can work a W-2 job, invest on the side, and still become wealthy. You're just going to take a little bit longer. And, it's just a different mindset, different animal, but there's nothing wrong with that. So, I take people and help them understand and figure out what it is they want to do first and foremost. And then we go from there. And it's built to their personality, to their tolerance. And then once we accomplish a thing, then they might want to do the next thing. But, I'm not out there saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. Everybody's different. And you got to be situational with everyone and their goals and their family and their needs and stuff like that. And I know at the end of the day, pretty much across the board, everybody would like to make a little bit more money. And everybody thinks they'd like to make a little bit more money. But, there's a lot of things that go along with that. So, it's all relative, and it's all about, I don't want to use the word balance because, I don't even look at that really. I just look at what do you want to do? What are you comfortable doing? Let's get you there and then see where it goes from there.
Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. And I highly recommend, Greg, anybody out there listening, to look into what he's offering regarding coaching. And, I'm not an affiliate for Greg. I've just worked with him. I know, what he's talking about. He knows and knows how to get that across to you, or at least to me, and a lot of other people. So if anybody out there is interested in talking with you, how should they reach out to you?
So my website has all my info. I've got some great stuff on YouTube, but my website, gregdickerson.com, all my contact info is on there. And, I do one-on-one coaching. I am going to start creating some courses. I've had a lot of people reach out, especially about development, commercial real estate and development. There's not a lot of info out there about that. So I think I'm going to put together some courses on that and, some more accessible programming for that, for people to learn how to do commercial and do development. And then, I'll probably make some stuff on flipping and wholesaling as well. And, how to get started. That's a big one. How to get started in real estate. You get that from a lot of people. Hey, I'm in college or I'm this or that. And, how do I just get started? So, there's a number of ways to do that. So I'll be coming out with some of that kind of stuff. But right now it's just one-on-one coaching. That's what I do. And, it's very individual, custom, tailored to whatever the individual's doing. And it's real estate as well as other businesses. And I'm active. Like you said, I've got some of the top investors in the country that are syndicating, that are flipping, that are wholesaling. I've got other businesses I work with, contractors, restaurants, retail, software, things like that. So it's all, at the end of the day, a business is a business. The fundamentals are the same. You're talking about people, operations, profit. So it all boils down to the same stuff. And where everybody gets hung up is in the same areas. How do I hire people? What do I do with them once I get them? And how do I keep them going? And same thing with the business. I know a lot of people know how to get started, know how to get something going. And it's easy to get to number one. It's easy to reach the top. The hard part's staying there and staying interested and passionate while you stay there. So that's what I help people do.
Nice. Yeah, well said. And so everybody, if you are interested in talking with Greg, finding out more, just head to his website, gregdickerson.com. And so thanks a lot, Greg, for being on the show again. Definitely got some stuff. I took some notes. I've got some inspiration from you from this one as well. So I have to get you on the show. And I know you've got more to share. But thanks so much.
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties. Hopefully you can have some fun with a little bit of editing there. Yeah. Make it interesting.
Yeah. No, it wasn't too bad. So yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. And we'll talk real soon.
Yep. Thank you. Enjoyed it.